kind of hot and the wind may screw me over with the mic on the camera. Let me get up where I can be heard. In this one, I'm going to talk about suicide attempts or whatever, and alcoholism and addiction, and getting into rehab. A girl that I met in rehab, and I'm going to get into it in a second, kind of a how to and what not to do kind of a thing, but a young woman who was a good friend of mine I met in rehab. Her name was Jordan Page Casso. Took her own life on May 11th, and I found out on Facebook, and it was just a huge shocker because she was really young and full of life, but that is what it is. I cannot change that. It happens in this business of alcoholism and addiction. It happens a lot, and there's really, that is what it is, you know. So the first thing I would say, they give you a lot of flack when you're trying to get into, you've decided that you have a drug or alcohol or psych problem. Nowadays, all psychiatric facilities or all drug and alcohol facilities are also dual diagnosis. So you're really, when you're going for help or checking into a rehab, you're really checking into a psychiatric facility that specializes in both. Usually they're called dual diagnosis facilities. Almost all of them are, because it's widely recognized that alcoholism and addiction are, at least components of that, are psychiatric problems. So the first thing that when I first decided, and I had been sober many years, and became addicted to prescription drugs, and because of a condition that I still have today that just drives me insane with pain. And so after a few years, I decided that I wanted to get help for that, just to get away, to get out of the situation I was in, and into a place where they could professionally detox me off of these very strong narcotic painkillers. And the first thing that you want to do, what I learned that day was I just opened up the phone book, or looked up on the internet when it was really just kind of getting going. There are all kinds of resources, but the first thing that you want to do is call the place and ask. I learned after a while, I've been 33 times, I think, in rehab and psychiatric facilities, sometimes against my will. But you want to call the place and ask what insurances they take first. So, and it takes an average of 8. I know all kinds of astounding rehab facts. To digress, I studied psychology and have a minor degree in psychology and experimental psychology, and I used to live with one of the most popular women who writes self-help books on alcoholism, addiction, and all of this thing. So, and I met her at a 12-step meeting. So, and that went on for nearly a decade. So, I'm well versed in it. And we used to constantly go to meetings and talk about all this stuff. So anyway, but the first place that I called was some kind of bullshit rip-off place where they wanted $30 or $50 to and gave me all kinds of really just rude, obnoxious, arrogant BS to get the money over the phone, to give me a referral. They said really all they did was just collect publicly available, I found out later, information, and try to sell it to you, to promise they'll get you into rehab, because it can be difficult to get in. But here's some tips and tricks on that. I know them all. And it's unfortunate that companies like that are even allowed to operate, because what happened was, I was like, look, dude, I at this point, uh, you know, and just I need to go somewhere now. I've made the decision. I don't want to be jacked off with lies and bullshit, and I'm not going to give you my credit card for $50, which I don't even remember if I had it. That's not the point. It just seemed sort of illegitimate. It was. And another 2 years passed after that experience before I actually did get into a rehab. So don't pay anybody up front, first of all. Whether it's, I also work in the music business. If somebody says they can get you a record deal or shop, don't pay to shop your material. Good material will shop itself. There are sharks out there. Same in the sort of psychiatric rehab industry. It can be really difficult to get into these places. I spent most of my career in Los Angeles, so there's a really open community, an open mind about all of that there. But if you've really decided you want to get into rehab, an astounding amount of them, this wind is really bad, an astounding amount of rehab facilities take public assistance, Medicare, Medicaid. It's amazing how many do. The first thing to do is get the phone book or get on the internet, get a list, and call them all. Or if it's a psych problem, if you're feeling suicidal or whatever, get on get a list and call them all. And before they give you a big song and dance about we offer this, we do that, or whatever, call them. And I would just call and say, hey, until I found like 5 that I would rotate in and out of for many years. One of them, the best in the world, took really crappy insurance, and they also take Medicare and Medicaid. I found out because everybody else in there had on a wrist thing that said Medicare, Medicaid. I still had insurance at the time and some means, but anyway, so call them, and before they try to sell you anything, just ask them. I would just call and ask, like, what insurances do you guys take? But if whatever they would say, I just go, before we even get started, what insurances do you take? And if they didn't list mine, I'd say, okay, thanks, next. Okay, thanks, next. And a lot of time, you can cut through a lot of time wasting garbage that way. And then the other thing is, on that track is, I found there's so much stigma against people who have drug and alcohol and psychiatric problems that I found it was best, even though it seems, and it is, whatever, dishonest, but it works. It's best to pretend that you're a concerned family member when you call up. I had an experience of calling one hospital, and the same day, within a few hours, and the same woman who didn't recognize it was me, and I called and said, hey, I need to get into rehab. I'm really not doing good. I've been barely out of bed for a couple of years. I weigh 120 pounds. I'm in bad shape. I'm addicted to narcotics. I just need some help. And she just put on the white wig and dropped in all this judgment about who I was, and I probably was completely insane. So that's why they act that way. They're probably right half the time, but so she just gave me a big run around bullshit, lies, and just not, half truths, and blowing me off. So I waited a few hours. I called back and said, I'm a concerned family member of someone who has a severe psych problem and drug addiction situation. I want to know what your requirements are. And the same woman, I ended up in the same day, I ended up speaking on the phone with her, and she even sort of asked me out later. For about 2 hours, and she was very helpful, and but calling, pretending to be a family member, because she didn't want to deal with the dirty, crazy drug addict, but the successful family member calling who was concerned, she did, and I learned enough info from her to know how to. You almost have to manipulate the system to get any help with these things. Um, so those are two things. Call ahead, check what insurances they take, and the second thing is if you're getting a bunch of flack, wait a day or call back and get somebody else and tell them you're a concerned family member, and they're much more helpful. And just find out, what should I bring, what's the program consist of, what insurances do you take, you know, anything you could possibly wonder. Another thing is, and I have been in situations where, man, there's like a hair in my eye today, but I've been in situations where it, I was just absolutely desperate for any kind of help. I was needed to get out of the environment I was in. I just couldn't take another day. A lot of times the way these programs work is you're just taken out of what you're in, the environment you're in, for it puts an interrupt, what is known as an interrupt in psychiatric circles, on the behavior, and you're able to sort of, from a safe place, assess what you've been up to and change it. A lot of times it takes an average of 8 times, though, for an alcoholic or an addict to go through rehab and to achieve any type of sobriety. So I have been extremely bad off, and very poor physical and mental health from illness and addiction, and just desperate for any help. And what I have done is, and this works in major cities. and smaller cities, they could care less. They don't have the resources. But in major cities, just go to the nicest I used to go to Cedars-Sinai all the time, the nicest hospital in the world. Just present yourself there, and say, hey, I don't tell them you need help for a drug and alcohol problem at the beginning. Just tell them, hey, if it's a desperate situation, you want to get in right away, so present yourself there and say, hey, I'm suicidal, I'm out of control, and it may not be the most pleasant thing in the world, but if you're somebody who is in a desperate, even homeless, desperate situation, know where to go. Go to the nearest hospital, tell them you're suicidal, and if you have to, tip something over in the lobby or act desperate, you don't have to do that. Just tell them that. And there's laws that force them to then, at that point, take you in at least for 72 hours and evaluate you. I heard of one guy who couldn't get any medical care at all, who had severe issues, and he just put on a nice business suit and had his friends drop him off along a major, the 110, or not the 110, but the 10 in Los Angeles, the biggest freeway there. And when he was walking along just kind of blindly in a business suit. When the police picked him up, he just said, I don't know how I got here. And he didn't have any idea. I don't know who I am. He pretended to have amnesia so he could get into the hospital system. But then, in my case, several times I was just so gone and in so much physical pain and hurting from addiction and just out of hand. I went to Cedars-Sinai several times and said, I am suicidal. I want help now. I don't want, in my mind I was thinking, I don't want to bullshit around with this or that, or telling me to wait 6 or 8 weeks so you can fit me in. And every single time, every hospital I went to, I had to do that several times. They took me in right away. And you're going to be in a lockdown facility, but hey, it's a safe place with, food and professionals, and that were there to help you. And then once I got in, I said, oh yeah, by the way, I'm, I take prescription morphine and prescription this, prescription that, and then they would just go, oh, okay, here's that too, or do you want to get off of that, The other thing that tends to go on with people who are purely going into rehab, and this is kind of a trick and a trap, and the only thing I can give you is my experience on this kind of thing, is that, life gets hard. These things happen, and pretending that they don't happen is the reason why, my friend Jordan is dead now. But it's funny how also nobody gives a damn if a guy's homeless, but oh my God, if he's suicidal, they will. I had the cops one time, thanks to a friend of mine, and I really wasn't suicidal. Anyway, they took chainsaws and cut security bars, or cut-off saws, that would cut through metal and cut through like 4 layers of security bars, cut the doorways off both ends of my house, and sent a SWAT team in to get me because I was suicidal. Supposedly, I wasn't really, and somebody had said I was. And they did $14,000 worth of damage to a property that I was renting, and just gutted the place. Came in, beat the crap out of me under the guise of going to help me. Beat me up, threw me in the worst hospital you could possibly imagine, where they, Thorazine me and kept me strapped down to a bed, 5-pointed hands and feet. Anyway, stuff gets crazy. It's funny how far they'll go sometimes to save somebody's life from suicide. I mean, the cops literally came in and beat me, beat me around to help me, and I didn't resist. It was insanity. But the other thing is that it's what to expect when you get in a place like that. And I have yet to ever be in a rehab where somebody didn't get a huge resentment against the staff or some person on the staff. And they're usually wonderful people. It's like 2/3 wonderful and 1/3 idiots who do not belong in the recovery business, that are spoil it. A lot of people. And it became the recovery business. It used to be about, caring. But a lot of people that go into the recovery field are in recovery themselves. And there's no more wonderful people in the world and smarter people and quicker people on their feet than alcoholic addicts. However, they are also some of the most devious, evil people they can be, with the biggest, most resentful baggage, garbage, that they carry with them. So, anyway, some of the people shouldn't be there at all. Don't pay any attention to them. Don't get into it with the staff. An example of that is I have the thing about Jordan. I found out she had died on Facebook, and so we were in pretty good touch. But one of my ex-girlfriends, who like 30 years ago, I took her to her first rehab. Follow me on this. So now I had been looking at her Facebook page thinking, I'm going to friend her, but let me see if she could be a pain, Susan. And we also went to tech school together. Well, so I was watching her Facebook page for a couple of years, and here she was drinking and partying and carrying on, and it was just with a guy in this big, huge, supposedly serious relationship. They were drinking every night and posting pictures on her Facebook page. And I watched this for a couple of years, and I thought, I don't know. So I finally said, what the heck, they have the acquaintance level. So I said, I'll friend her, put her on the acquaintance level. If she becomes a nuisance, I'll block her, because she's one of those people. She's worth having around, but she could be a pain in the ass. Anyway, what happened was, I had been watching her Facebook page for 2 years, her public, it was public. And when I friended her here about a few months ago, she said, I've been sober for many years, and I'm just a big girl, all grown up now, and yada yada. And I was thinking, dude, you don't know it, but I've been looking at all your pictures for a few years. You're anything but sober. Well, she works in the recovery field. She's like, I'm an official in the recovery field. No education in it. No, maybe a 2-week certificate or something. But because people are in recovery, they somehow think that qualifies them to work in recovery, and it's anything but, So anyway, and then I see now she's marrying a guy who she, all of a sudden, out of the blue, and she's like 50 now, anyway, she is now marrying a guy that she met as a staff worker at a recovery center. In other words, she was the staff, he was the patient. She's now marrying the guy. So, you just talk about levels of inappropriate. So all kinds of stuff happens. But anyway, the bottom line on that is, I would say it's a serious business, and I could tell you, all kinds of stuff about this, but um, if you have a drug and alcohol problem and it's serious, like my friend Jordan did, it was obviously going downhill rapidly. And every time I'd chat with her or talk to her, I would sort of say, look, we met in a very, it was serious enough for you to be captured by the police and thrown in a recovery thing. You might not, maybe could you take a year off from drugs and alcohol just to try it? Nope, no way. Don't tell me who I am, what to do. I got it wired. Well, she's dead now. Anyway, I would say you'd be better off taking a couple of years off your entire life and just doing nothing but learning, how to live off of drugs and alcohol if you have a horrible problem with it, like a lot of people do and like I've had. So you're better off just stopping everything and taking a couple years, 5 years of your life, who knows, to get it over with and really get a solid foundation. A lot of it is just, they say you have a spiritual experience, and they keep talking about this, and really what it is after you've been going to 12-step groups and you've been in recovery for a while and you don't drink and you don't use anymore, one day what happens is, and it happened to me, you have a spiritual experience of the educational variety. A lot of it's just about educating yourself. What happens is, and what happened to me was, one day, after I was running a successful business and doing all kinds of huge, amazing, successful stuff, and I realized, oh wow, this came slowly, but now I'm completely different. Everything is it's great. Things are really good now. And I haven't drank or used in like 6 or 7 years. And it didn't happen like this huge, like a big light shone from above. But over time, the change was so absolutely dramatic that it will floor you. And you hear that all the time. So a lot of it's about education. But anyway, yeah, it just, one day it floored me. It's like, wait a minute, I used to, pretty much drink all the time, smoke weed, take all kinds of pills, and be a no-goodnik. And now it's like I own several multi-million-dollar businesses, and my thinking is clear, and I'm able to do all it's like, oh, wow, something amazing has happened here. It's like that, a spiritual experience of the educational variety. So anyway, the bottom line is, a lot of these places are businesses. Like where I'm at now, I eventually did, after 21 years of not drinking, I went on about a good 5-year drinking binge every minute of every day. And I'm in a small community, and I went to they have like a public assistance place here, and I was just like, I showed up there, I was like, I can't drink anymore, I don't want to drink anymore, I'm done with it, I'm sick, I'm physically ill, I'm just this, that, and the other. And they were like, yeah, whatever, who cares, But I did get on the internet, and I found, through the place where I met Jordan, a major university about 200 miles from here, I managed to get a ride there. And through them, even though I'm 200 miles from there now, they will send, if I were to need help again, and I had to go back like 3 times for surgeries, neurological surgeries and different stuff. So it was advantageous for me to go back there and stay in psych and rehab, and then get the surgeries done from there, But the point is, these are businesses, and they will send a car down to get me anytime. Why? Because they make tons of money doing that. They have the driver gets paid, the hospital gets paid, but it's a thing. They can make it really hard. It set me back a couple of years. Some dickhead wanting $50 when I realized it was a scam and it shouldn't work that way, and it doesn't. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. But and I'm not the least bit embarrassed to talk about it, because you're only as screwed up as your shame of all this stuff. And shame implies sort of huge ego. You think that everybody cares about your stupid little problem, and it's this huge thing that you want to hide, when really it's your own ego telling you to hide it. So anyway, now I'm going to tag this one. Not many people watch these, but if I just could have got some of this info earlier in my life, when I really needed it, and not be jerked around by profiteers. Anyway, it's been difficult dealing with Jordan, a 25-year-old gorgeous young woman who basically took her own lives with prescription drugs, or drugs that she should never have had in the first place. And she was a drug addict, and that is what it is. It happens a lot. I've seen it a lot. So anyway, that's that.